Republicans are crossing into extreme new territory by holding up government funding after losing an election to destroy a signature piece of legislation of the country's current majority party. A piece of legislation that was passed by both houses, signed by the president, deemed constitutional, and extensively litigated in the last presidential election.
Thomas Friedman captured it well this week when he urged President Obama, for the sake of American democracy, not to give in to them. Quote, "What is at stake in this government shutdown, forced by a radical Tea Party minority, is nothing less than the principle upon which our democracy is based, majority rule. When extremists feel that insulated from playing by the traditional rules of the system, that they're insulated, if we do not defend those rules, namely majority rule and the fact that if you don't like a policy passed by Congress, signed by the president, and affirmed by the Supreme Court, then you have to go out and win an election to overturn it. You can't just put a fiscal gun to the country's head. Then our democracy is imperilled."
The party that I joined was the party of Lincoln, the party of Theodore Roosevelt, the party of Eisenhower. These were patriots all. They were for one nation, indivisible. Now what we have is an insurrectionist, neo-Confederate party that seems to be dedicated to all kinds of apocalyptic outcomes. I don't know whether this comes from their fundamentalist religious outlook or whether it's just good fundraising for them among their base, but they are no longer a normal political party. They are an insurrectionist party that is bringing down the government.
Speaker Boehner to simply say, when he gets up tomorrow morning, we're going back to the regular American system. Sorry, crazies, we're going to enforce the law and move on.
But I think what we're really seeing here is a crisis of democracy, where one party believes its principles are so correct, so strong, and the other party's principles are so evil that we're essentially talking about God compromising with Satan. And you can't do that, and therefore they are justified in using any means necessary, perhaps even revolutionary or military means, to get their way, despite the fact that the majority disagrees with them. They don't think that that matters in the slightest. The truth of their principles is the only thing that matters to them.
When in the history of this country have we ever had a shutdown over a law?
We've had shutdowns over a law and spending. That's what I was here in '95. That's what that was
not
all
over
about,
a law. I said
spending.
over a law. You repeated the question. Now answer.
How do you think we pass a? How do you pass?
When have we ever had a shutdown
by a law?
When have we ever had a shutdown over a law?
The GOP, as it exists now, is kind of a Frankenstein monster.
This is over a law. It was said that you do not want to fund an existing law that was passed by the House and the Senate, that was upheld by the Supreme Court, that was central in the You cannot compare that to 95 or any other law.
There are deeper historical forces at work here, namely the takeover of the Republican Party by the South. We talk about Republicans taking over the South, but actually it's the other way around.
Interesting.
And the politics of the Republican Party today can best be understood as the politics of the Southern Democrats.
Is this a law or not? Is this a law?
It is a law, and Congress changes the law, and that's what we need to do.
Since we both agreed to, we can have different opinions, we can have different facts. The fact is it's a law. Now, tell me when in the history of this country have we ever shut down the government over a law?
Well, there have been 17 instances in which we've had
none of them
shutdowns.
over a law.
And they're always over a law because you have to pass a law to fund the government. It's a very basic part of our government.
No, that's a spending issue. That is not saying that we want to stop as we want to stop the Affordable Care Act.
There is one element that does not reflect the views of the Republican Party.
Can I say this to you, Congressman? In all due respect, The debate is over. They passed the law.
No.
You're talking about what you would go with and not go with. You acting as if this is not the law. It is immaterial what you think now. The law was passed.
They think if they sound reasonable, the public will be fooled into thinking that they're not the unreasonable ones who are trying to destroy government and maybe put us into default because they're having a tantrum over a law that indeed was passed and affirmed by a conservative-led Supreme Court.
So then if you can do that to this law, what stops you from doing that to any law? Why don't you just say, we're going to take this law despite the fact it was passed, and we're going to decide, even though we lost it, we're going to decide that we're going to play with that.
We change the law every day. That's what this is about.
You change laws. You don't defund laws.
Well, obviously, the principle that he's upholding is critical, which is that this is no way to govern. We can't hold the government hostage. We can't hold our economy hostage to ideological fetishes.
You change laws by proposing changes, and you vote, and you get it passed, and the president signs it. You do not change laws by defunding, by taking a minority of the House and blocking funding on a law.
In other words, we're going to kill the thing you did legally, constitutionally, whatever, and we want you to happily agree to kill half of it. I think King Solomon pointed out about that.
9/11 sort of released a lot of unpleasant things in the American id. A kind of absolutism of good versus evil, a kind of totalitarian outlook.
How do you convince yourself even that a law that's been passed, reviewed by the Supreme Court, 3 years old, and it's about to be implemented, but you have a right to slice it in half or destroy it because of some, what? What is the, you remember the dictators, I'm not naming any particular dictators, but it's always been what is mine, and what is yours is negotiable. That's what dictators do.
So what the president needs to do is hang tough here and see this through. And the principle is no negotiations at the point of a gun.
I've been thinking a lot the last 2 days about a term that you're probably familiar with called massive resistance, which was a term that was used in the 1950s to people who opposed the Brown versus Board of Education decision and used any means necessary, constitutional, legal, illegal, whatever it took, to fight that, the desegregation of the public schools. And that, in that sense, the Republican politics of today are the same as the politics of the Southern Democrats of the 1950s.
Rejectionism